The Detroit sun scorched the pavement like punishment that afternoon as Tariq Monroe sat hunched behind the steering wheel of his battered Honda Civic, the air conditioning barely functional, the radio silent, and his phone vibrating endlessly with notifications from debt collectors. He had just finished his 10th DoorDash delivery of the day and hadn't eaten since the coffee he'd gulped down at dawn. He parked outside a small soul food joint on East Grand Boulevard and stepped inside, the scent of fried chicken and collard greens pulling him toward the counter like a lifeline. With one hand, he pulled out crumpled bills from his pocket, eyes squinting to calculate if he could afford the mac and cheese combo or if it was another one-meal day. That was when he noticed her. A sleek, black Rolls-Royce Phantom parked across the street, engine idling, windows tinted just enough to hide but not completely obscure the woman inside. Her eyes were locked on him. He glanced over his shoulder, unsure if someone else was behind him, but she didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. The door opened. A tall man in a driver's uniform stepped out and swiftly opened the passenger side, and then she emerged. Her silver hair was twisted into a low chignon, and she wore a crimson silk blouse, tailored slacks, and heels that seemed impossible for someone her age. She walked with poise that didn't match the calendar. As she crossed the street, the restaurant owner quickly stood upright, nearly knocking over a tray. "That's Ms. Whitmore," he whispered. "Clarice Whitmore." Tariq had heard the name. Everyone in Michigan's business circles had. Real estate tycoon, tech investor, logistics queen, and one of the oldest black women on the Forbes list. She stopped right in front of him. "You're Tariq Monroe, aren't you?" Her voice was velvet wrapped around steel. Tariq blinked, then straightened his shoulders. "Yes, ma'am, that's me. Have we met before?" She gave a small nod. "Not directly, but I know your story." She glanced down at his shoes, then back into his tired eyes. "Your mother, Lorraine, needs dialysis twice a week. Your little sister, Nia, is at Spelman and struggling to pay for her last year. Your father passed from COVID in 2021, and you've been holding the family together since then. DoorDash, Uber, nighttime security shifts, and weekend construction, correct?" Tariq's mouth went dry. "How do you know all that?" Ms. Whitmore held out a sleek black business card embossed in gold. "Because I've been watching you. You, Mr. Monroe, are exactly the kind of man I need. I have a proposition." She took a slow breath. "Marry me." Tariq laughed instinctively. It burst out of him, a mix of disbelief and hunger. "You're joking." She didn't smile. "I never joke about contracts." He stared at her, her face unchanging, eyes steady, posture regal. "Why would someone like you want to marry someone like me?" "Because I can offer you something in return," she said, lowering her voice. "If you agree, I will pay for your mother's full treatment with the best specialists in New York, your sister's tuition, housing, and a guaranteed placement after graduation done. All debts you currently owe will vanish by Monday morning. I'll make sure of it. In exchange, you marry me, legally, publicly, and you follow a set of conditions I will outline." Tariq didn't speak. He couldn't. His chest burned. Was this real? A mirage cooked up by heat and hunger? Or a trap with silk walls and velvet chains? "I'll give you time," she said, then turned and glided back toward the Rolls-Royce. "My driver will expect your call." The next few days blurred. Tariq tried to focus on work, but the threats escalated. The hospital called again. No payment, no dialysis. A man knocked on their apartment door with a warning. 2 more days, then we come back with a truck." His sister sent a voice note through tears. "They're kicking me out, Tariq. I can't do this." That night, he opened his cracked phone screen and dialed the number on the black card. "Yes," he said when a voice answered. "I'll marry her." Within 48 hours, he was on a flight to Los Angeles for a courthouse ceremony, unlike anything he had ever imagined. Clarice Whitmore didn't just command attention, she devoured it. The mayor showed up. A retired senator whispered to Tariq, "You're one lucky son." Photographers snapped pictures from a distance. Contracts were signed. Witnesses nodded. Tariq stood at her side in a dark suit she had ordered tailored overnight. And just like that, with no honeymoon, no vows of love, and no kiss, he became the legal husband of a woman 60 years his senior. The Beverly Hills mansion was a palace in every sense. White marble staircases, custom stained glass ceilings, security gates with retina scans, and art on the walls that Tariq had once seen only in textbooks. Every door had a code. Every room was whisper silent. The domestic staff, all young, attractive women, moved with precision and deference. They spoke to Ms. Whitmore as if she were royalty, and to Tariq like he was a passing shadow. And then there was that hallway, the second floor. The heavy door with 4 digital locks, a fingerprint panel, and armed security stationed nearby at all hours. He asked about it once. A maid's face went pale. "That's Ms. Whitmore's private archives," she whispered. "Off limits. Not even the butler goes in there." Nights were the hardest. They sat at opposite ends of a long dining table under chandeliers as old as some governments. She would ask, "Is the room temperature to your liking?" Or, "Do you prefer Bordeaux or Shiraz?" And nothing more. He ate in silence, sometimes glancing up to find her studying him with an unreadable expression. Was it affection, assessment, something else? On the 4th night, unable to sleep, Tariq wandered through the halls and past her wing. A soft jazz tune drifted from inside. The door, usually locked, was slightly open. He froze. Through the crack, he saw her standing by a fireplace, barefoot, her robe unfastened at the throat, holding a phone to her ear. Her voice was fierce, alive. "I won't let the past dictate the present," she said into the receiver, "but I also won't forget what he did." Tariq's spine tingled. That voice, it didn't belong to an 85-year-old woman. It was younger, angrier, more vibrant. He backed away slowly, questions spiraling. Who was she really? What was this marriage truly about? The next morning, he found the courage to approach Amina, her assistant, a striking woman with a calm presence and a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Amina," he said carefully, "I'd like to spend time with my wife tonight, privately. I feel like I owe her that." She blinked in surprise, then her face softened. "She's been waiting for you to ask. I'll arrange it." When Tariq returned to his room that evening, a note awaited him on the pillow. "Come to my quarters at 10 p.m. I've been waiting. Clarice." The handwriting was elegant, measured. Tariq sat on the edge of his bed, heart racing. Whatever happened tonight, it would change everything. Clarice's private quarters were on the far side of the mansion, beyond a glass hallway that curved like the spine of some great serpent. As Tariq walked toward her wing, he passed gilded portraits, velvet curtains that shimmered in the dim light, and antique mirrors that reflected his nervous face. His palms were slick with sweat despite the cool air. At the tall double doors, he paused. For a full minute, he just stood there, unsure of what he'd find, unsure of what he was stepping into. Then he knocked. The doors opened inward without a sound. Clarice stood before him, barefoot on a Persian rug, dressed in a flowing silk gown the color of moonlight. Her skin glowed, her hair was unbound, cascading down in silver waves, and her posture was neither forced nor formal. For the first time, she looked like a woman rather than a legend. "Come in, Tariq," she said softly, her voice no longer velvet-wrapped steel, but warm and welcoming. He entered. The room smelled of orchids and sandalwood. Candles flickered in gold sconces. A jazz record played something smooth and aching. He had expected opulence, and it was there. But there was also something else, vulnerability. She gestured toward a curved settee near the fireplace and sat beside him, her bare feet tucked beneath her like a girl half her age. "You're wondering why I asked you here," she began, but her tone was uncertain, like she didn't know quite where to begin. "Yes," Tariq replied honestly, "but I also came because I wanted to see you. Not the empire, not the legend, not the contracts, just you." Clarice's eyes softened. "Then let me begin by saying something I haven't said in years. Thank you, Tariq, for not treating me like a transaction." Tariq looked at her closely. Her wrinkles didn't seem like flaws anymore, but roads she had walked, battles she had survived. "I didn't know what to expect when I married you," he admitted. "I came into this thinking I was doing what I had to, for my mother, for Nia, but now, I don't know what to think." Clarice reached for a glass of water and held it delicately, the way a violinist might hold her bow. "I married you for reasons even I didn't fully understand at the time. Part of it was selfish. I wanted companionship, yes, but I also wanted control over my future, over my legacy. I thought I could buy time, buy relevance, maybe even buy a new beginning, but I didn't expect to care this much." She paused, as if testing her own words. "You treat me like a person, not a relic, not a curiosity. That matters more than I ever imagined." Tariq was silent for a moment. "It's hard not to care, Clarice. You saved my family. You changed everything. But I can't lie. There's something strange, something you're not telling me." Her smile faded. "You mean the locked room?" He nodded. "And the way you knew so much about me. The way we met. It felt choreographed." Clarice didn't flinch. She stood slowly and walked to a cabinet near the window. From inside, she retrieved a leather-bound book and handed it to him. "This is my journal. I started writing it the day I turned 45. If you read it, you'll understand who I am. But I'll tell you this much tonight. There was a man, once, who changed the course of my life. We loved each other, deeply. But he left me. Said the age gap was too much, said people would talk, that I was too old to be a real partner. I never forgave him. Not fully." Tariq turned the journal in his hands but didn't open it. "What was his name?" "Marcus," she said without blinking. The name hit him like a whisper in the dark. His father's name. He couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "You knew my father?" he managed to say, voice cracking. Clarice exhaled slowly. "Yes, but that's not tonight's story. Tonight I just want to be here. With you. No masks, no schemes." She moved closer and placed her hand gently over his. "Whatever the reasons we began this journey, something real is forming between us. I feel it. Don't you?" Tariq stared at her hand. It was warm, real, alive. His instincts screamed for distance, but his heart leaned in. "I do feel it," he said quietly, "and it scares me." "Good," she whispered. "It should. Anything worth having usually does." They sat in silence, the jazz spinning out its last notes, the fire dancing shadows on the ceiling. Tariq finally opened the journal and read the first line. October 17th, 1983. Today, I met a man named Marcus Monroe. He smells like sawdust and cinnamon, and he makes me feel like 21 again. He closed it slowly. "We'll talk more tomorrow," Clarice said, her voice now steady. "But thank you for coming tonight. That alone changed more than you know." As he left her quarters, the air outside felt heavier, not from heat, but from the weight of truth just beneath the surface. Everything had changed, and tomorrow it might shatter. 3 mornings later, Tariq awoke to an unusual stillness in the mansion. No distant sounds of staff moving through hallways, no hum of Clarice's conference calls echoing from her study, and most notably, no movement from the West Wing. Clarice had flown to New York the night before for an emergency board meeting with Whitmore Global's East Coast stakeholders. She was expected to return by evening, but until then, the estate was eerily quiet. Tariq paced his room, the weight of the journal Clarice had given him still heavy in his mind. He had only read the first few entries, but they had unlocked a part of his family's past he had never imagined. His father, Marcus Monroe, had been more than just a hard-working contractor in Detroit. He had once been the center of a powerful woman's heart. And now, pieces were falling into place, pieces he wasn't sure he wanted to assemble. By noon, curiosity overtook hesitation. He dressed in a simple black tee and jeans, slipped out of his suite, and climbed the staircase to the second floor. The security guards usually stationed outside the forbidden door were nowhere in sight. Perhaps they had been given leave in Clarice's absence. Perhaps this was fate nudging him forward. The door, once sealed with biometric locks and keypads, was ajar. Not wide open, but enough to suggest an invitation. Tariq hesitated. His breath slowed. He pushed gently. The heavy wood creaked inward. The room beyond was nothing like the rest of the house. It was not a vault, not an office, but a sanctuary of memory. Soft light filtered in from a domed skylight. The walls were lined with photographs, dozens of them, framed in gold, silver, wood. Tariq stepped forward. The first photo he saw was black and white, dated 1984. His father stood beside a younger Clarice, both smiling in front of a modest real estate office. In another, they were on a boat, wind in their hair, their arms around each other like they had never known pain. Tariq's knees weakened. His father had never mentioned her, never hinted. All his life, Marcus Monroe had spoken of hard work and sacrifice, never love lost or secrets buried. He picked up a bundle of letters tied in green silk. He recognized his father's handwriting instantly, tight, left-leaning, deliberate. "My darling Clarice," one read, "I never thought I could feel this way again after losing Evelyn, but you've awakened something in me I thought had died with her." Tariq's hands trembled. The next line shook him. "I want us to build something bigger than buildings. A life, a family." He turned toward the center of the room where a table held a single framed photograph, his father, Clarice, and a small velvet box between them, an engagement ring. Tariq's mind raced. Why hadn't this story ever reached him? Why had his father buried this part of his life? A sound behind him snapped him from the trance. He turned. Clarice stood in the doorway. She had returned early. Her travel coat was still on, a silk scarf twisted at her throat, but her face was unreadable. "So, you found it," she said, stepping inside without surprise. "I thought you might." Tariq opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally managed. "You were in love with my father, and now you married me." "Yes," she said calmly. "All of it is true." She stepped past him and touched the edge of a photo. "Your father and I met at a real estate expo in Birmingham. He was ambitious, kind, a single father trying to rebuild. I was already widowed once and rebuilding something to myself." Tariq's voice grew sharp. "And what? You loved him and he left you? So you married his son out of what? Spite?" Clarice turned to him then, her eyes glistening but defiant. "He didn't just leave me, Tariq. He humiliated me. He made promises, big ones, and broke them publicly. I introduced him to investors, to partners. He used my connections, my trust. And when I asked for something deeper, when I asked for marriage, he called me desperate. He said I was chasing youth I'd never have again, that people would talk, that his son would be embarrassed." "I was 5, Tariq whispered. "He said marrying me would be a disgrace to you. He said he couldn't explain to his community how he ended up with a woman 20 years older, no matter how much she was worth." Clarice's voice cracked, but she straightened quickly. "So, yes, when I saw your name years later on a construction permit in downtown Detroit, I remembered. When I heard about your mother's failing health, your sister's tuition issues, the debts, the exhaustion, I watched. I waited. And when you were desperate enough, I made my move." Tariq's heart pounded. "So all this, everything, was a calculated revenge plot?" Clarice didn't flinch. "It began that way." She looked out the window, voice quieter. "I wanted to punish Marcus, even in death, make his son kneel where he once laughed, but then you happened." Her gaze returned to him, soft now. "You're not your father, Tariq. You're better, kinder. I didn't expect you to look at me without disgust. I didn't expect you to defend my dignity in front of staff. I didn't expect you to sit with me night after night and eat in silence just to keep me company. And now, I don't know who's trapped whom." Tariq backed away. "This is sick, Clarice. You stalked me, manipulated me, exploited my pain just to bury a ghost?" "No," she said, stepping forward, "to bury my bitterness. And now, I'm trying to dig my way out." There was silence, deep, aching silence. Then Tariq whispered, "You said once that love can't be bought." "It can't," Clarice said, "but it can be earned back." He shook his head, unsure if he should leave, scream, cry, or hold her. "You used me." "I did," she said simply, "and I hated myself for it, but I also grew to love you, and that, Tariq, that was never part of the plan." He looked around the room, at the walls built from longing and regret. "So what happens now?" Clarice stepped back. "That depends on you." Tariq walked out, heart torn, mind storming. Behind him, the door clicked softly shut. What had started as a salvation deal was now tangled with decades of betrayal, longing, and something even more dangerous, real feelings. The following morning brought rain to Beverly Hills, a rare and gentle curtain of water that cloaked the mansion's marble walls in silver mist. Tariq sat alone in the breakfast atrium, staring at a bowl of untouched oatmeal while the rain tapped lightly on the glass ceiling above him. Clarice had not come down. There were no emails, no summons from her study, no piano music drifting from the west wing. And Tariq, now burdened with a truth too heavy to ignore, felt a weariness that reached beyond bone. The day moved in slow motion. He wandered the house without purpose, pausing occasionally at photos on the walls that now felt like riddles. Every interaction, every moment shared between them, replayed through a new lens. Clarice hadn't just saved him, she had orchestrated him. But what haunted him more than the manipulation was the echo of sincerity in her voice when she said, "You're not your father. You're better." Just after dusk, Amina found him on the south balcony. Her eyes were tense and she looked older than her 24 years. "She's asking for you," she said softly. "She's in her suite. She hasn't been feeling well since New York. I told her to rest, but she refused. She says only you." Tariq followed without speaking. Clarice's private suite was warm, lit with low amber lamps and the scent of lemongrass. She sat in a reclining chair by the window, wrapped in a thick shawl. Her skin looked paler, the sharpness in her cheeks dulled by fatigue, but her eyes still held that unyielding glint of command. "Tariq," she said, almost in a sigh, "sit." He sat across from her, silent, waiting. "You left that room yesterday without slamming the door," she said. "That was mercy. Thank you." "I wasn't sure what to feel," he answered. "Still not." Clarice nodded slowly. "There's no justification for what I did, only an explanation. I loved a man who treated me like a novelty, then a liability, and finally a shameful secret. For years I convinced myself that I had moved on. But when I saw your name on that permit, your face in that interview so like his, I knew I hadn't healed at all. I saw a chance to take something back." Tariq leaned forward. "But then," Clarice gave a tired smile, "then you offered me a kindness he never did. You listened. You stayed. You never mocked my age, never pretended I wasn't here. You made me feel human again. It undid me." He wanted to stay angry, to hold the wound open, but the woman before him was no longer the puppeteer. She was the survivor. "Why didn't you just tell me?" he asked. "Because revenge doesn't survive the light," she whispered. "But now I have no interest in vengeance. I'm too tired, Tariq, and I'm not well." The words landed like lead. "What do you mean?" She looked toward Amina, who had stepped into the room with a file folder. "Stage 4, she said gently. "Pancreatic. It's moving fast." Tariq stared at Clarice, the woman who had once seemed immortal, unstoppable, untouchable. Now she looked smaller, breakable. "You knew?" he asked. She nodded. "That's why I rushed the marriage. I didn't know how long I had. I wanted to put my affairs in order. I just didn't expect to fall in love along the way." Her voice broke. "I don't want to die with bitterness in my chest. I want to die with your hand in mine." Tariq stood. He didn't think. He crossed the room and knelt beside her. "I forgive you," he said, voice thick. "Not because what you did was right, but because I believe people can change, and I believe you did." Clarice touched his face. "Then let me give you what I've built. Let me make you the steward of it all, not because I owe you, but because you've earned it." Over the following weeks, Tariq stood at Clarice's side through every doctor's visit, every round of treatment, every sleepless night. She began transition and control of her businesses to him, walking him through the empire she had built brick by brick. And as she grew weaker, their connection grew stronger. They talked for hours about race, legacy, betrayal, faith, and the future. She confessed every secret. He confessed every fear. They healed each other. And then, one morning, she didn't wake. Tariq found her wrapped in her shawl, eyes closed, lips curled into a faint smile. She was holding a photo of herself and Marcus taken decades ago. A note on the nightstand read, "I loved twice in one lifetime. That makes me the richest woman in the world." The funeral was grand. Business titans came from across the globe, but it was Tarek who stood at the front, holding the same photo she had kept in her final hours. "Clarice Whitmore was not perfect," he began. "She was sharp, stubborn, and for a time, vengeful. But she was also brave enough to change, brave enough to let love soften her. And in her final days, she taught me that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's legacy." Months passed. Tariq, now CEO of Whitmore Global, moved his mother and sister into the mansion. His mother received world-class care, and Nia graduated from Spelman with highest honors. Amina, who had walked through fire beside him, slowly became more than a friend. A year later, he married her in a quiet ceremony beneath the same skylight where Clarice had once spoken of buried pain and unspoken hopes. They named their first daughter Clarice. Tariq kept the journal on his desk, never locked away. He often opened to that first page, rereading the words of a woman who had once believed time had passed her by. And when young entrepreneurs asked him how he built an empire, he would smile and say, "I didn't build it, I inherited it." From a woman who believed in second chances, even for herself. In the end, the mansion, once shadowed by secrets, became a sanctuary of light. And the story of Clarice Whitmore, once written in pain, was rewritten in love.